Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Skåne here in the very south of the country. We're going to go back to a brewery who have featured on the channel a good number of times before, and these guys are revered for their Imperial Stouts, and quite rightly so in my experience. And we've got one today that I think will be really quite interesting. So for this review then, we are going to go to Malmö, about 20 kilometres or so to the south of me here in Lund, and we're having a look at yet another beer from Brewing. So this one is called Infix, and this is the Caramel Macchiato edition. It's an Imperial Milk Stout coming in at 10.8% ABV, and hopefully this is another very interesting beer from Brewing. So I was actually given this beer by Hannes Gruber, the owner of Brewing, and I was given that a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it would be nice to release this review for you on the same day that the beer is released through Systembolaget. So this beer will be available after the publishing time. This beer will be available 3 hours later in Systembolaget as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment for July 2020. So you'll find it in the Hansa store, I think, in Malmö as well. Which is one of the 4 boutique stores in Sweden that gets basically everything apart from all of the local Småskaligt beers. But yeah, I would recommend that you get a hold of this beer if you can, but you can order it through the ordering system of course too. But yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. A huge thank you to Hannes of course for giving me this beer as well, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one too. I'm a huge fan of milk stouts, and I'm sure, knowing Brewing, I think this beer will be pretty damn good actually. So let's see how we get on. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brewing before. You will see a few more in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Brewing. So as I've told you already, Brewing are based in Malmö in Skåne in the very south of Sweden, and the company was founded by Hannes Gruber and Karin Karlsson back in 2015 when they had their premiere at the Malmö Öl and Whiskey Festival. So both of these guys were big beer enthusiasts, and they just wanted to kind of turn professional and get into the industry. From what I understand, it was Karin who really kind of inspired Hannes to take his home brewing exercises and become professional, if you like. So as I just said, Hannes had been a home brewer for a very long time, and he got very good feedback on his beers, and this really inspired him just to go for it and turn professional. So he comes from a background in software development, and that's why a number of the beers, most of them actually, have names that come from programming. But he basically was taking care of the brewing side of things, while Karin was an entrepreneur and a trader in the IT industry, and so she managed the business side of the brewery, but she's no longer part of the company. But they started up with a very modest production, and they've become now the most highly rated brewery in Sweden on Untappd, bar for a few of the meaderies. And there is that whole debate, is mead beer? But mead is awesome anyway, that's regardless. But these guys, as I say, they are the best rated beer brewery in Sweden according to Untappd. But their beers are pretty much all brewed at Lilla Ölfabriken, Chad Beer, and some also in South Plains as well, which is right next door to the brewery. The company is now officially joined with Chad Beer and Lilla Ölfabriken. They've got a brewery group together, so the building, the actual umbrella organisation, if you like, is called Lilla Ölfabriken, and then there's beers released under the 3 different brands, under Chad Beer, Lilla Ölfabriken, and then Brewing. And Elm 11, actually, a new kind of up-and-coming brewery, they're also brewing a number of their beers with Lilla Ölfabriken as well. So who knows, maybe they'll join the Lilla Ölfabriken organisation a little bit later on. But recently these guys have been experimenting a little bit more with a few different styles. They've produced an IPA, which you would have seen me review a while back, called Switch, and that was really very nice actually. And of course most of their beers are still Imperial Stouts. I've had a barley wine from them, I've got a Saison in the fridge that I'll review for you at some point very soon. But yeah, most of the beers that these guys have produced are Imperial Stouts. But other than some beer festivals around Sweden, for a long time it was very difficult difficult to get a hold of the Nerd Brewing beers. You could only get them through the likes of Glassbank and Kiosk and things like that. Some of the beer dealers in Denmark, basically, and I think it was 2018 that they started to release a few of the beers through Systembolaget, and you can see the first one that they released there, that is called Extends, and I think it was one of the original versions of Extends that Hannes put into Systembolaget. But as of July 2020, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, they've produced in the region of 70 different beers. As I say, the vast majority of them are Imperial Stouts. You know, there's maybe, if you're lucky, I think there's about 10 or so that are not Imperial Stouts. One or two IPAs which have been around on one of them. The switch was in the can, the other ones were basically in cask and keg around Malmö, and then you've got the saison and a couple of barley wines and things like that as well. But you know, 90% of the beers that these guys produce are Imperial Stouts, and of course that is Hannes' favourite beer. But yeah, one of the cool things about this brewery that I've forgotten to mention in other reviews is the open source beer thing. So if you are interested in the recipes of these beer, you can email Hannes, and he will give you the recipes for these beers, so you can have a go at brewing them yourself. So pretty damn awesome, actually. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Nerd Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more, you can check out my interview that I did with Hannes. That video has been really well received, actually, so you will see more Meet the Brewery segments over the next little while. So I would recommend that you check that one out, and you can hear Hannes talk about his whole beer journey and all these sorts of things. That was really, really fun to make, and yeah, you can learn a little bit more in depth about it there. You can check out the brewery website where you can get the recipes for some of these beers as well. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of the different beers that Nerd Brewing have done. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the history section of the video and get on to actually tasting the beer. So yeah, the bottle is sweating a bit because it's very, very warm here in Sweden these days. So yeah, I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open up. There you can see the artwork is pretty typical of what you would expect from Nerd Brewing. There is the Nerd Brewing symbol in the bottom corner there, the kind of, I think it is meant to be a bottle cap, like a crown. There you can see it's got the lovely wax top on this one, and if you check out my interview video, you will see Hannes actually waxing a couple of these Nerd Brewing bottles, which is pretty cool, actually. So yeah, 10.8% Imperial Milk Stout, this one, the Caramel Macchiato edition, 10.8% ABV. Infix. Let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting. And very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So, oh, hand went a little bit weird there. But yeah, let's get it out and into the glass. Another beer that's released from these guys on the same day, incidentally, that's brewed at the same brewery rather, is the Elements Lager, which is a collaboration brew between Chad Beer and the up-and-coming Elm 11. So I would recommend that you pick up that beer as well. And there is also a Berliner Weisse that's being released as a collaboration with Chad Beer. Or is that? No, I think that one's Lila Urfabriken, if I remember rightly. But yeah, you will see a Berliner Weisse reviewed from Elm 11 a little bit later in the month, actually. And that one is being released on the same day as well. As I say, these four breweries are quite closely connected together. But yeah, as you can see and as you would expect from this beer, it's poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour there. There was a very kind of thin layer of a kind of dark tan head on this one. It's gone back to just be a very kind of thin ring around the very edge of the glass there. So yeah, that's pretty interesting, actually. From what I gather, it's wheat that gives a lot of the head retention in beers, and this one I guess maybe doesn't have all that much wheat in it. It does say on the side here, yeah, it just says barley malt, oats and lactose, actually. So yeah, that makes sense as to why this one hasn't really retained its head then. And of course it is fairly high in alcohol. The higher you go on the alcohol scale, the more the less the head retains, actually. So yeah, that's always worth remembering. But yeah, if we shine the light through this beer, it is pretty much black as night. You do get a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to the beer at the top of the glass, and I think that is you know, otherwise it is pretty much black as night, to be honest with you. It's fair to describe this one as a sort of ebony rosewood colour, and yeah, so nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance, actually. So yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma of this beer then before we have a taste of it. Really curious to see what this one has in store, like I said. Oh, that smells really nice. That really does. Yes, yeah. I really like the aroma of this one. This could be my favourite aroma from an Air Brewing beer so far. So yeah, with this one you can smell the coffee being the backbone of the beer. And obviously when it's called Caramel Macchiato Edition, you would kind of expect that a little bit. But it's really balanced between the nice kind of coffee roasted backbone and a lovely kind of sweet, you know, milky chocolate type quality actually. The aroma of this one is lovely. I do think probably this is my favourite aroma that I've come across from... I think this is my favourite aroma that I've come across from an Air Brewing beer so far. And I don't take that lightly because these guys, you know, they are pretty bloody good. They are pretty damn good when it comes to Imperial Stouts. So I think this is my favourite aroma from Air Brewing so far. So thumbs up to them on this one actually. So yeah, straight away with this one, as I say, you get that nice coffee malt just in the background of the... You get a lovely kind of coffee note in the background of this beer. It's got a lovely kind of... The coffee, I think, has a very kind of smooth roast quality to it. Coffee, of course, I've talked about this in other reviews, you know, coffee beans are one of the most kind of diverse adjuncts that you can put into a beer. They can be aromatic, they can be earthy, they can be fruity, and it's all about the metres above sea level at which the coffee bean is produced. The higher altitude you grow these things at, the more you're likely to get fruity and, you know, aromatic and floral qualities and things out of them. But for me, the coffee that comes out of this, it does have a wee bit of an aromatic quality to it, but it comes across as really nice and smooth actually. But yeah, there is definitely an element of a nice sort of floral quality to it. And I think it's got a wee teeny bit of an almost citrusy note, to be honest with you, just a very small kind of citrusy note from the coffee bean itself. But yeah, smoothly roasted, lovely little bit of aromatic quality, and you have some nice, as I say, you've got some very nice sort of aromatic, slightly citrusy notes coming out of that. But yeah, the coffee forms the backbone of the beer, and it comes across very smoothly. You can smell the kind of lactosey note coming out of this one. I always find that lactose gives you an almost vanilla type aroma. It's not quite as strong as vanilla, and it's not quite as sweet as vanilla, but it's not lactosey aromas are not a million miles away from vanilla, in my opinion. So yeah, you've got a lovely kind of sweet milky chocolate coming out of this one. It smells a little bit, you know, like Marabou or Carl Fraser chocolate. Not sure how good a reference that is for you guys living outside of Sweden, but yeah, Marabou is the big Swedish chocolate brand. Carl Fraser's a beautiful Finnish chocolate as well. I think I like Carl Fraser a bit better actually. I do love a little bit of Carl Fraser. But yeah, the chocolatey notes that come out of this are lovely and milky, you know, a sort of 40%-ish cocoa milk chocolate actually. It's got a lovely big sweetness to it. You can definitely smell a bit of brown sugar in this one. It's got a lovely... you know, it comes across as a straight up sweet caramel, not really toasted, a big kind of oily, sweet sort of caramelly note coming out of this beer. There are one or two little nutty undertones to the beer, a little bit of woodiness and things like that as well, which is kind of what you expect when you've got a big 10.8% stout like this. But yeah, the aroma of this one is really quite nice. I mean, it's not, the aroma isn't really doing anything surprising, it's just, you know, it's just a beautiful aroma, I have to say. I think this is definitely my favourite aroma that I've come across from Air Brewing so far. I mean, of course, their beers always tend to be really complex in terms of the way the flavours go together, but this is just an aroma that really kind of ticks the boxes and strikes me straight away. So yeah, this is, I think, yeah, I'd say this is my favourite aroma from an Air Brewing beer so far. So yeah, lovely notes. Like I say, the coffee forming the bit of the backbone. Then you've got the kind of lactosey, milky chocolate coming out of it. You've got a lovely bit of brown sugar to this one, a sweet caramel, and you've got a few kind of woody and slightly nutty undertones to it too, which is really very, very nice actually. It almost has a wee bit... I was almost tempted to say there's like a tiny little touch of cinnamon to this one. It almost smells a little bit like it has a wee bit of that to it, which is interesting, because I wouldn't have expected that out of it, but there is just almost a little bit of that kind of... There's almost a very slight spicy note to this one. But yeah, a beautiful aroma in terms of the malt and adjunct kind of cooperation actually. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things, there's a very light sort of earthiness to this one. you do get a wee touch of it. There's a wee tiny bit of a floral note, but there is an element of grassiness in there as well. Of course, you could age this beer a bit longer if you really wanted to. I don't think you need to be quite frank, but you could age this one a little bit longer, and the sort of green side of the hops would drop away even further if you really wanted to, or if you left it for a while. But yeah, there is a bit of grassiness to this one, but a very, very light grassiness, not too kind of zesty. That makes sense, but a lovely soft earthiness to it. And then of course you've got the fruity side of the beer too. So there's a nice little bit of a kind of plummy, there's a nice little bit of a sort of plummy note to this one. It doesn't quite have the sharpness of raisins, a sort of juicy kind of plummy quality to the beer. A little bit of a kind of juicy figgy note as well, and as you would expect, there's a wee bit of a kind of blackcurranty, blackberry-ish sort of thing to this one as well. I mean, it's the typical kind of fruits that you'll get from sort of straight up Imperial stouts there. I think it gets a bit more berryish and juicy the further you go into the aroma, like a blackcurrant, blackberry sort of thing. But yeah, I really like how the aroma of this one fits together. So yeah, this I think is my favourite aroma I've come across from a Nerd Brewing beer so far. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we go on. This one is the Infix. Incidentally, in programming, Infix is it's basically a way that, if I remember correctly, the infix is basically a command that you put into the code that's to do with the ordering of mathematical operators and things. So it tells the computer in which order to calculate things. So it's a certain type of procedure. You get infix, is it outfix, and what's the other one called? I can't remember. I've not used those things in ages. But yeah, it's basically to do the infix is essentially a means of, you know, using the mathematical axioms in a certain way. You know, what order do you do, you know, certain calculations, and so that is what an infix is. But yeah, I've explained that poorly, I know. But yeah, 10.8% Imperial Milk Stout, this one, at the Infix Caramel Macchiato Edition 2020 from Nerd Brewing in Malmö in Skåne, here in the very south of Sweden. Thank you to Hannes for giving me this beer. Go and get this one at Systembolaget in a couple of hours when it comes out. Slanje, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful beer. Thumbs up to Nerd Brewing once again. Yeah, I like how this. I do like how this one goes together. I mean, I would say that in terms of it being a milk stout, it's quite it's actually one of the more oily milk stouts that I've come across. It still retains, I mean, with the Nerd Brewing beers that I've had before, it still retains a good little bit of the oiliness. I've always found the Nerd Brewing beers to be quite oily, and this one, it doesn't feel a lot more creamy, if you like. It does feel a bit more creamy than some of the other ones, but it doesn't feel a lot more creamy than some of the other stouts that I've had from these guys before, come to think of it. And the other impression I'm getting of it straight away is it's got a massive big roasty note to it in the aftertaste as well, actually. So that's interesting. It's definitely not a sweet milk stout, if you like. It's definitely got the kind of the coffee elements to it, but then again, when it is, you know, called Caramel Macchiato Edition, that is not that's absolutely not surprising. But yeah, I will say that this is another, you know, class beer from Nerd Brewing. This one is awesome. Get this one, have a go at it for yourself and see what you think. I really like this, I do. Yeah. What you'll find with this beer is when you take it in, it's very, very smooth and very oily in the beginning. Almost leans a bit towards the fruity side of things, but then gradually you'll feel the beer dry out and dry out and dry out and dry out, and then you start to get the kind of coffee notes out of it, which is you know, which is very interesting. So I really like how that element of it goes together. Yeah, as I say, the thing that surprises me about this beer a little bit is how oily it is. It's a bit creamier than some of the other Nerd Brewing ones, as I said, but definitely not a whole lot creamier, I think. But the flavour of the beer is absolutely beautiful. So let's try and break this one down a little bit then and just see how we get on. So in the if you go into the middle third of your tongue and towards the back actually. The back third of your tongue is actually quite roasty and dry and bitter, to be honest with you. You've got a nice, the coffee that comes out of this one, it's actually it feels a lot more roasted in terms of its flavour than it comes across as being in the aroma, so that's quite interesting. The aromatic-y thing that I said, that statement does stand up. It does have a wee bit of that aromatic-y quality to it. There maybe is a wee touch of a citrusy note to the coffee on that side as well, but basically the back third of your tongue is a roasty, toasty coffee bean type quality that takes over there. So I do like how that goes together. Yeah, I would definitely stick with that. The middle of your palate, the middle third of your tongue, that's where it starts to kind of smoothen out a little bit. So in the middle of your tongue, the coffee more kind of interacts with the lactose and really smoothens out a little bit like that, which I guess is kind of similar to like a kind of to a macchiato. I'm not a big coffee drinker, of course. I love the flavours that you get from different coffee beans that you put in beers, and a lot of that started, as I've told you before, with the Key and the Sidamo Dimtu from Dugas Brewery in Gothenburg, because before, I'd never really liked coffee stouts before I tried those, but those were beautiful. Yeah, so you can feel the coffee, the coffee beans kind of mixing more with the lactose in the middle third of your palate actually, which I think is very, very nice. But yeah, you've also got on top of that, on top of the coffee and the kind of lactosey thing, and I would say that the beer gradually gets a bit sweeter almost as you go forward on that middle third of your tongue. You do get more and more sweetness out of it, but yeah, I like how I do like how that kind of goes together. But in the middle of your palate, you do get more of a kind of, you can feel the sort of dark chocolatey notes coming out of the beer. It's got a little bit of a kind of high cocoa percentage chocolate, around a 70-80% cocoa chocolate. I would definitely say that. But yeah, in the very centre of your palate, you have got a lovely kind of sweet caramel to this one. It doesn't really come across as kind of treacly and molasses-like. It is more of a kind of straight up sweet caramel in the very centre of your palate. So yeah, you've got that dark, kind of quite bitter chocolate there, and I'm surprised about that, because in the flavour, and in the aroma rather, it was obviously a little bit more milky actually, but you do get a few more milky elements as you go further forward on the palate. But yeah, you've got that lovely kind of sweet caramel in there, and you can just feel the coffee bitterness just almost pushes its way through that that dark chocolate and kind of sweet brown sugary element that the beer has. So that's another interesting point to make about this one, is the way that side of it behaves. So yeah, interesting that, I have to say. But yeah, as you move, if you go to the centre of your palate from that sweet caramelly note and move forward, you will feel that the chocolatey flavours do gradually get a bit more kind of milky and lighter actually, which is quite interesting. So yeah, I like how I do like how that side of the beer goes together actually. That's really it's really interesting in that sense. But yeah, if you go to the back corners of the palate, then, or the front corners of the palate, sorry, then move diagonally backward a little bit, you will start to get a few kind of woody undertones to the beer. As I say, as you go from the centre of your palate then forward, you'll start to get a more kind of milky chocolate, like a sort of 40%-ish milky chocolate quality there, and you've also got a few kind of nutty undertones to the beer as well actually. So I really like how that kind of side of it comes out. But yeah, you will feel, as you reach the kind of border between the front third of your tongue and the middle third of your tongue, you've got this really almost like well fired, it's like the kind of really roasty toasty edge of a brownie, it's like that in there, and then you start to get the kind of fruity notes in front of that, so you've got a nice kind of roasty border between the malty and the malty, adjuncty and fruity side of this beer, which is quite nice. So yeah, there's a nice kind of, when you take this beer in, it does have a really bit of that kind of nice, juicy kind of plum quality to it. It's almost got a wee bit of a kind of raisiny sharpness, I think, when you take it in. Then you'll feel that front third of your tongue, it just, this oily quality just rolls out on the fruity side of things, and it becomes a little bit more The plumminess kind of stays there, but then you get a little bit more of a kind of figgy, juicy quality to the beer, and as you reach the kind of front tip of the tongue, you'll get a few sort of blackberry and blackcurranty notes coming off of this one the further that you go into the aftertaste as well. But the thing that really lingers into the aftertaste with this beer is that roasty toasty border between the kind of front third of your tongue and the middle third of your tongue, and some of the coffee roasty-ish elements are pushing their way out of the they're really pushing their way out of this beer further on. So I think this beer, it's definitely one of the more roasty and toasty milk stouts that I've come across. It's by no means a sweet stout. I think it's definitely fair to say that. This is by no means a sweet stout, but the way that it goes together, I think, is very, very nice. And I think I've not actually had a properly I've not actually had a properly sweet stout, I think, from their brewing so far, actually. I mean, they do, most of their stouts always have this roasty toasty backbone to them, so I think that it's probably fair to describe most of the Nerd Brewing beers as kind of Russian Imperial stouts. They've got that really roasty toasty kind of thing about them. But I will say, this is a really, really nice beer. I like this one. I really do like this one. Is it my favourite Nerd Brewing beer in terms of flavour? I'm really not sure about that. I mean, the thing that you are guaranteed with this brewery is that you are going to get a really bloody good stout out of them. And again, that's what it's like. It's hard to actually think about, it's hard to kind of think about whether this one's better than some of the other ones, because the flavour, the scope of the flavours is quite similar. It's very, very kind of small subtleties, if you like. I do like this beer, and I think it is really pretty damn good, but is it my favourite? To be quite honest with you, it's quite hard to, it's really hard to say, to be honest with you. But in terms of aroma, I do think this one has one of the best aromas. Probably the best aroma, actually, that I've come across from an Nerd Brewing beer, so we can say that about it. But it's a beautiful beer. It's another awesome Imperial Stout from these guys. If you know this brewery, it's not surprising how good this beer is, but yeah, this is definitely one. If you haven't had anything from this brewery, this one keeps up the same standards, and you will really, really enjoy this beer. So I do recommend that you have a go with this one. If you are expecting a sweet stout, you're not going to get that from it. It is another kind of roasty, toasty Imperial Stout, and that is typical of what Nerd Brewing are doing. In terms of the mouthfeel, definitely a full-bodied beer, there's no doubt about that. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It has got a little bit of creaminess to it, like I said, but mainly I find this one to be quite oily. There's a nice level of bitterness to this beer, both from the kind of coffee adjuncts. There is a bit of it from the hops, the earthiness, as I say, from the hops in this one does get a bit more powerful the further you go into the aftertaste, so there is an element of that to it. You've also got a little bit of a kind of grassy and floral kind of thing going on with this one, which I do like. Yeah, you do get, I think, maybe about 70 IBUs. I think somewhere in that region. It could be 80. 70 or 80 IBUs. I don't think it's pushing much beyond that, but I think 70 or 80 IBUs, which, as I say, for a milk stout is quite surprising. Usually they are a bit lower in IBUs, maybe about 50, I think 50 or even 60 at most, to be honest with you. But yeah, quite a bit of bitterness coming out of this beer. The malt base, as I say, it is quite smooth and quite sweet. If it wasn't for the coffee that was added into this beer, I think this beer would be quite a lot sweeter. So to be honest, to try it and a non-coffee edition of this beer, I think would be really interesting. I'd be very curious to see how sweet the beer was without the coffee into it. Not that the coffee has a negative influence on the beer, but yeah, I think the coffee adds a good bit of bitterness to the beer as well, in my opinion. But yeah, I like how that goes together. I love you've got a bit of sweetness in the middle of the palate there, like I said, and you've got some lovely juicy, fruity characters to the beer. It's got a little bit of oiliness to the fruity side of things. There's not much bitterness to this one apart from the earthy side of it. But yeah, in the middle of the palate you get a bit more sweetness out of it, but you've got a really roasty, toasty, bitter quality on the back third of the tongue, like I said. So yeah, definitely one of the more roasty and toasty milk stouts that you're going to come across, actually. So yeah, another lovely beer from Nerd Brewing. If you know this brewery, this one isn't really surprising in terms of what it gives you, but it is really damn good quality, and if you know this brewery, you will expect that from them. This is another lovely beer from Nerd Brewing. Gets a massive thumbs up from me, and I recommend that you try this one for yourself and see how you get on. So yeah, let's leave this tasting at that then. So yeah, this was the Infix Imperial Milk Stout Caramel Macchiato edition, coming in at 10.8% ABV from Nerd Brewing in Malmö here in Skåne in the very south of Sweden. A Probably my favourite Nerd Brewing Aroma, as I've said, and you know, it matches the quality of the other Imperial stouts that I've had from Nerd Brewing before. So over the next while you will see me review one more stout from these guys, and you will also see me review a Saison very, very soon as well, so I need to get that review done and out there. But yeah, I've got another 2 beers sitting in the fridge from Nerd Brewing that you can check out. But do definitely check out this brewery. I highly recommend you have a look at the beers that these guys are producing, especially if you're a fan of big roasty toasty Imperial stouts. You know, pretty much pick something you think sounds good from this brewery and you will be in for a treat. The Switch IPA is very good, and the Finally Barley Wine is also great as well. These guys are very good when they try different styles. That's my one criticism, is I wish that they did that a little bit more often. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from their brewing as well, and I will catch you guys very, very soon with my next review from them. And do check out my interview that I did with Hans Gruber, the main man behind their brewing as well. Until the next time, it's Slange just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slange Skull. This one was the Infix from their brewing in Malmö, Skåne, here in the very south of Sweden. 10.8% Imperial milk stout with a little bit of coffee added to it. Cheers.